The rain battered against the glass facade of the Imperial Heights Hotel, blurring the city lights of New York into a kaleidoscope of gold and charcoal. Elena shivered, pulling her soaked trench coat tighter around her body as she stepped into the lobby. The air inside was warm, scented with expensive sandalwood and fresh lilies, a stark contrast to the biting November wind she had just escaped. She looked down at her boots, caked with a bit of mud from the dash across the street, and felt completely out of place. This wasn't her world. She was a junior copywriter, living in a studio apartment the size of a closet, not a guest at the city's most exclusive hotel. But tonight was different. Tonight her company had booked her a room for the annual gala the next day. It was supposed to be a standard room, a small perk for working overtime 3 months in a row. She approached the front desk, her hands trembling slightly as she handed over her ID. The receptionist, a woman with immaculate makeup and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, typed furiously on her keyboard. "We have been expecting you, Miss Vance," the receptionist said, her voice smooth like velvet. "It seems there was an issue with the standard rooms due to a plumbing leak on the 10th floor. Management has upgraded you. Here is your key card. Top floor. The penthouse suite." Elena blinked, sure she had misheard. The penthouse? That couldn't be right. Those rooms cost more per night than she made in a year. But before she could question it, the receptionist was already attending to a phone call, waving her away dismissively. Elena took the black key card, which felt heavier than plastic, and walked toward the private elevators. Her heart pounded in her chest. An upgrade. Maybe the universe was finally throwing her a bone after the disastrous year she'd had. "I have a question for you. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Let me know your city in the comments below. I love seeing how far our stories travel. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. You don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's begin." The elevator ride was smooth and silent, your ears popping as it ascended 50 stories into the sky. When the doors slid open, there was no hallway. The elevator opened directly into the suite. Elena stepped out, her jaw dropping. The room was cavernous. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. A fireplace crackled in the center of a sunken living room, and the furniture looked like it had been curated for an architectural magazine. It was dark, lit only by the fire and the city glow. "Hello?" she called out, her voice echoing slightly. Silence. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. It was empty. It was hers for the night. A giddy laugh escaped her lips as she kicked off her muddy boots by the door, leaving them on the pristine marble. She wandered further in, trailing her hand over a leather sofa that probably cost $50,000. She found the bedroom, where a king-sized bed dominated the space, covered in sheets that looked like liquid silk. "I could get used to this," she whispered to herself. She placed her meager overnight bag on a velvet armchair and decided that a shower was the first order of business. The bathroom was a sanctuary of white marble and gold fixtures. She turned on the water, letting the steam fill the room, and began to unbutton her blouse. She was tired, bone-tired, and the promise of hot water was the only thing on her mind. She didn't hear the elevator chime. She didn't hear the heavy footsteps crossing the living room floor, muting instantly against the thick Persian rugs. Elena walked back out into the main living area to grab her robe from her bag. That was when the atmosphere in the room shifted. The air suddenly felt heavier, charged with static electricity. The hair on the back of her neck stood up. She wasn't alone. She froze, clutching her half-unbuttoned blouse to her chest. Standing by the fireplace, pouring an amber liquid into a crystal glass, was a man. And not just any man. He was tall, his broad shoulders straining against the fabric of a bespoke charcoal suit. He had his back to her, but the aura of power radiating from him was palpable. "Excuse me," Elena squeaked. The man turned slowly. Elena felt the breath leave her lungs. He was devastatingly handsome, with sharp, predatory features, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. But it wasn't a welcoming face. It was hard, cold, and currently furious. "Who are you?" His voice was a low rumble, dangerous and deep. Elena took a step back. I think there's been a mistake." "The receptionist," she said. "I was upgraded. This is the penthouse, right?" The man didn't answer. He set his glass down on the mantelpiece with a sharp clink. He didn't look like a guest. He looked like he owned the place. He looked like he owned the city. He took a step toward her, and Elena instinctively retreated until her back hit the wall near the elevator. "Upgraded?" he scoffed, the word dripping with disdain. "This suite is private property. It isn't part of the hotel inventory. How did you get up here? I used the key card." Elena held up the black plastic card like a shield. The man's eyes narrowed, scanning her from her messy hair down to her sock-covered feet. He didn't look convinced. He looked suspicious. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone and tapped the screen once. Then he did something that made Elena's blood run cold. He walked past her, ignoring her flinch, and went straight to the panel by the elevator. He punched in a code. Heavy metal bolts slammed shut within the door mechanism with a resounding thud that echoed through the suite. A red light blinked on the panel. What are you doing?" Elena asked, panic rising in her throat. "Locking the door," he said calmly, turning back to face her. "Let me out," Elena demanded, trying to muster some courage. "I'll go back to the lobby. I'll tell them it was a mistake. Just open the door." "I can't do that," he said, crossing his arms over his chest. "What do you mean you can't? You just did. Open it." He walked closer, invading her personal space, until she could smell the scent of expensive whiskey and rain on him. He towered over her, making her feel incredibly small. "You walked in here with a key card that shouldn't exist," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than a shout. "And 2 minutes ago, security alerted me that someone leaked my location to the press. There are currently 50 photographers swarming the lobby and the side exits." Elena stared at him. "What does that have to do with me? It means," he said, leaning down so his face was inches from hers, "that until I find out who you really are and who sent you, nobody leaves this suite. We are on total lockdown." Elena's mouth fell open. "You're kidnapping me." "I'm containing a breach," he corrected. "And you, sweetheart, are the breach." "My name is Elena. I'm a copywriter. I'm nobody." "We'll see about that, Elena," he said, testing her name on his tongue as if tasting a poison. He turned his back on her again and walked toward the window, looking down at the chaos on the streets below. "Make yourself comfortable. It's going to be a long night." Elena watched him, her heart racing like a trapped bird. She was locked in a penthouse with a man who looked like he could destroy her life with a snap of his fingers. And the worst part, as fear coursed through her veins, she couldn't deny the sudden, traitorous spark of attraction that flared in her chest. She was trapped, and the billionaire inside had just thrown away the key. She watched his reflection in the glass. He seemed burdened, his shoulders tense. Who was he? She racked her brain, trying to place his face. The business magazines her boss left on the coffee table, the news channels. Then it clicked. Julian Blackwood, the tech mogul, the man who had revolutionized artificial intelligence and then vanished from the public eye 6 months ago amidst rumors of corporate espionage and a family scandal. He was supposed to be in Zurich, or Tokyo, not hiding in a New York hotel. "You're Julian Blackwood," she whispered. Julian stiffened. He turned his head slightly, capturing her gaze in the reflection. "Clever girl," he murmured. "That makes you even more dangerous." "I'm not dangerous," Elena insisted, stepping away from the wall. "I'm cold, I'm tired, and I just wanted a shower. I don't care about your company or your scandals." Julian turned fully, leaning against the window frame. He studied her, really looked at her this time. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes, the exhaustion in her posture. His expression softened by a fraction, but the suspicion remained. "There's a guest bedroom down the hall to the left," he said, his tone purely transactional. "You can shower there, stay out of the master suite, stay away from my laptop, and do not, under any circumstances, try to use the landline or Wi-Fi. The room is jammed." "Jammed? You blocked the signal." "I value my privacy, Elena, something you clearly have no respect for." "I didn't know," she cried out, frustrated tears stinging her eyes. "Go. Shower," he dismissed her, turning back to the window. "Before I change my mind and tie you to a chair for interrogation." Elena didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her bag and bolted toward the hallway he had indicated. She found the guest room, which was larger than her entire apartment, and locked the door behind her. Her hands were shaking so bad she could barely turn the lock. She leaned against the heavy wood, breathing hard. She was trapped with Julian Blackwood, the most eligible, elusive, and dangerous bachelor in the world, and he thought she was a spy. She stripped off her damp clothes and stepped into the shower, turning the water up as hot as she could stand. She needed to wash away the stress, the fear. As the water cascaded over her, she tried to formulate a plan. She just had to wait until morning. The lockdown would lift, he would realize she was innocent and she would leave. Simple. But as she stepped out of the shower and wrapped herself in a plush white robe, she realized she had left her phone in the living room, in her coat pocket. Damn it, she cursed. She debated leaving it. But if she wanted to prove who she was, show him her work emails, her booking confirmation, she needed that phone. She took a deep breath, tied the robe tighter and opened the door. The living room was darker now. The fire had burned down to embers. Julian was sitting on the leather sofa, his jacket discarded, his tie loosened. He had a laptop open on his knees, the blue light illuminating his sharp features. He looked up as she entered. The sight of him made her falter. Without the armor of his suit jacket, he looked raw, powerful. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin. I forgot my phone," Elena whispered, pointing toward the entryway where her coat lay. Julian closed the laptop slowly. He reached to the side table. In his hand, he held her cheap smartphone with its cracked screen. "This phone?" he asked. "Yes. Please give it back." "I already went through it," he said calmly. "You what?" Elena gasped, outrage overriding her fear. "You invaded my privacy. You invaded my home," he countered coolly. "I checked your emails, your texts. It seems you are telling the truth, Elena Vance, junior copywriter at Miller & Finch. Rent is 2 days late. Your mother calls you too much. And you have a peculiar obsession with cat videos." Elena felt her face burn with humiliation. "You had no right. I had every right to ensure my safety." He stood up, walking toward her. He held out the phone. "But you're clean. You're just a civilian caught in the crossfire." Elena snatched the phone from his hand, careful not to touch his skin. "So can I leave?" "No," Julian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The lobby is still a zoo, and now that I know you're innocent, I can't exactly throw you to the wolves. The press would eat you alive. They'd spin a story that you're my secret lover, my mistress. Your life would be over by morning." Elena swallowed hard. She knew he was right. The tabloids were ruthless. "So what do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We wait," Julian said. He gestured to the sofa. "You might as well sit. I ordered room service before I locked us in. It should be coming up the service elevator any minute." Elena hesitated, then sat on the far end of the sofa, curling her legs under her. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. "Why are you hiding?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Julian looked at her, his eyes dark. "I'm not hiding, Elena. I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For a traitor to show his hand," he said cryptically. He picked up his glass again. "But that's not something you need to worry about." The service elevator chimed. Julian walked over and retrieved a cart laden with silver cloches. He wheeled it over to the coffee table. "Truffle risotto, roasted duck and chocolate souffle," he announced, lifting the lids. "I assumed you were hungry." Elena's stomach growled loudly, betraying her. She blushed. "I haven't eaten since lunch." "Eat," he commanded gently, handing her a plate. They ate in silence for a while. The food was divine, exploding with flavors Elena had only dreamed of. As she ate, she watched him covertly. He seemed less terrifying now, just tired, intense. "So, Eleanor," Julian said, breaking the silence. He leaned back, swirling his drink. "Tell me, if you aren't a spy and you aren't a gold digger, what is a woman like you doing in a place like this?" "A woman like me?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "You know what I mean. You're innocent. This world," he gestured around the room, "it eats innocence for breakfast." "I can take care of myself," Elena said defensively. "I work hard. I'm trying to build a career." "And is it working?" he asked, his gaze piercing. Elena sighed, putting down her fork. "Not really. I'm broke. My boss takes credit for my ideas. And now I'm trapped in a penthouse with a billionaire who thinks I'm a security risk." Julian chuckled. It was a low, raspy sound that sent a shiver down Elena's spine. It was the first time she had heard him laugh. It changed his entire face, making him look younger, less guarded. "Well, when you put it that way, it does sound tragic," he said. "It is tragic." She smiled weakly. Julian looked at her, his eyes lingering on her lips. For a moment, the air between them crackled again. Not with fear this time, but with something else. Something dangerous in a different way. "You have sauce on your lip," he said softly. Elena reached for a napkin, but Julian was faster. He reached out, his thumb brushing against the corner of her mouth. His skin was rough, warm, and the contact sent a jolt of electricity straight to Elena's core. She froze, her breath hitching. Julian didn't pull away immediately. He held her gaze, his eyes darkening. For a second, Elena thought he was going to kiss her. She wanted him to. God help her, she wanted this stranger to kiss her. Then the moment broke. Julian pulled his hand back as if he had been burned. He stood up abruptly, pacing toward the fireplace. "You should go to sleep," he said, his voice rough. "Take the guest room, I'll stay out here." Elena blinked, feeling the loss of his touch. "Okay," she whispered. She stood up and walked toward the hallway. At the door, she paused. "Julian?" He didn't turn around. "What?" "Thank you for the dinner. Go to sleep, Elena, before I forget that I'm supposed to be a gentleman." Elena hurried into the room and shut the door, her heart pounding against her ribs. She climbed into the massive bed, but sleep was the last thing on her mind. She could still feel the ghost of his touch on her lip. Outside, in the living room, Julian poured himself another drink. He stared at the closed door of the guest room. He had been alone for so long, trusting no one, building walls so high nobody could climb them. And then a soaked, terrified girl with big brown eyes had walked right through his defenses. He shouldn't have touched her. He knew that. She was a distraction he couldn't afford. But when he looked at her, he didn't see a spy or a threat. He saw something he hadn't seen in years, a challenge. The storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil inside the suite. The night was far from over. And Julian had a feeling that by morning, nothing would ever be the same. The digital clock on the bedside table read 3:14 a.m. Elena stared at the red numbers, the glowing digits burning into her retinas. Sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Julian's intense gaze, felt the rough pad of his thumb against her lip. The storm outside had intensified, turning into a full-blown tempest that rattled the heavy glass panes of the penthouse. Thunder cracked, a sound like a whip snapping against the sky, shaking the very foundation of the building. Elena jolted upright, clutching the duvet to her chest. She hated storms. They reminded her of a childhood spent in a drafty house with a leaking roof, hiding under the bed while the world seemed to end outside. But here, in this fortress of luxury, the fear felt different. It was isolating. Her throat was parched. She needed water. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, she threw off the covers and padded barefoot across the plush carpet. She cracked the bedroom door open. The living room was bathed in shadows, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning and the dying embers in the fireplace. She assumed Julian had gone to the master suite. The room was quiet. She crept toward the kitchen area, the marble floor cool against her feet. She found a glass and filled it from the tap, drinking greedily. As she lowered the glass, a flash of lightning lit up the room and she gasped, nearly dropping the cup. He was there. Julian hadn't gone to bed. He was standing by the massive floor-to-ceiling window, staring out into the violent darkness. But he wasn't wearing his suit anymore. He had discarded his shirt, leaving his upper body bare. Elena stood frozen, her eyes tracing the lines of his back. He was sculpted like a Greek statue, broad shoulders tapering down to a narrow waist. Muscles rippled beneath his skin as he shifted his weight. But what caught her attention wasn't just his perfection. It was the jagged scar running down his right shoulder blade, a stark white line against his tanned skin, a mark of violence on a man who seemed untouchable. Couldn't sleep. His voice cut through the silence, deep and rough. He didn't turn around. He saw her reflection in the glass. Elena hesitated, then took a step forward, drawn to him like a moth to a flame. "No. The storm. It's loud. It's just noise," Julian murmured. "Sound and fury signifying nothing. It feels like the world is ending," she whispered, coming to stand beside him, though she kept a respectful distance. "Sometimes," Julian said, turning his head to look at her, "the world needs to end so it can be built again." His eyes were bloodshot, weary. He looked like a man carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders. In the dim light, seeing him half-naked and vulnerable, Eleanor felt a surge of boldness. "Why are you still awake, Julian? And don't tell me you're waiting for spies." "The door is bolted, no one is coming in." He turned fully to face her then, and Elena had to remind herself to breathe. The sight of his bare chest, the dark hair dusting his pectorals, was overwhelming. "I don't sleep much," he admitted. "Sleeping requires letting your guard down. And in my line of work, that's a fatal mistake." "Who hurt you?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. It was a personal question. Intrusive. But the intimacy of the stormy night made it feel permissible. Julian's jaw tightened. He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "Everyone," he said simply. "My partners, my competitors, even my own brother. They all want a piece of the kingdom. They don't care if they have to kill the king to get it." "That sounds lonely," Elena said softly. "It is." He took a step toward her. The distance between them closed. The air in the room grew thick, charged with a tension that was palpable. Elena looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was wearing nothing but the hotel's oversized white robe, and she felt acutely naked under his gaze. "You shouldn't be here, Elena," he warned, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "You should be in that room, with the door locked." "Why?" she breathed. "Because I'm not a good man," he said, his eyes darkening. "I'm selfish. I take what I want. And right now." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The hunger in his eyes said it all. Elena felt a shiver run down her spine, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. "I'm not afraid of you," she lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe she was just more afraid of walking away and never knowing what it felt like to be touched by him. "You should be," he growled. Another crack of thunder shook the room, louder than before. The lights flickered and then died completely. The penthouse was plunged into absolute darkness. Elena gasped, instinctively reaching out. Her hands collided with warm, solid skin. Julian. He caught her by the waist to steady her, his large hands burning through the fabric of her robe. "Don't move," he commanded, his voice right next to her ear. "The generator will kick in." But the generator didn't kick in immediately. For a long, stretched moment, they were enveloped in the dark, guided only by touch. Elena could feel the rapid beat of his heart against her palm, matching her own. She was pressed against his bare chest, her hands resting on his abs. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Elena," he groaned, a sound of pure frustration. Then his hands moved. One slid up her back, tangling in her hair, while the other pulled her flush against him. He lowered his head, seeking her in the darkness. When his lips found hers, it wasn't gentle. It was an explosion. He kissed her with a starving intensity, devouring her mouth. Elena made a small sound in her throat and melted into him, wrapping her arms around his neck. His stubble grazed her skin, rough and exciting. He tasted of whiskey and danger. It was a kiss of possession, a claim. For a man who said he had nothing, he kissed her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Elena kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring all her frustration, her fear and her hidden desires into the moment. She felt his hands roaming over her back, sliding down to her hips, pulling her tighter until there was no air left between them. The robe loosened, slipping off her shoulder, and his hand found the bare skin of her arm, his touch scorching. For a moment, the storm outside ceased to exist. There was only Julian, his heat, his taste, the overwhelming masculinity that surrounded her. Then, just as suddenly as they had gone out, the lights flickered back on. The sudden brightness was blinding. Julian tore his mouth away from hers, breathing heavily. His eyes were wild, his pupils dilated. He looked at her swollen lips, her disheveled hair, the robe slipping off her shoulder, and a look of conflict crossed his face. He stepped back abruptly, putting distance between them. He ran a hand through his hair, turning away. I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I shouldn't have done that." Elena stood there, dazed, her body still humming from his touch. "Why?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You wanted to." "I wanted to." "That's exactly why," Julian snapped, though there was no malice in his tone, only regret. "You're a guest, Elena. You're under my protection, taking advantage of you while you're trapped here. That crosses a line I promised myself I wouldn't cross." "I'm not a victim, Julian," she said, pulling her robe up with as much dignity as she could muster. "I'm a grown woman, and I'm a man hanging by a thread," he countered, looking at her one last time. His eyes were filled with a raw, burning desire that terrified and thrilled her. "Go back to bed, Elena, lock the door, because if you stay out here 1 minute longer, I won't be able to stop myself again." Elena looked at him, seeing the battle raging behind his eyes. She knew he was right. This was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But God, how she wanted to stay. Slowly, she nodded. She turned and walked back toward the guest room, her legs feeling like jelly. "Good night, Julian," she whispered without looking back. He didn't answer. Elena closed the door to her room and leaned against it, sliding down until she hit the floor. She touched her lips, which still throbbed from his kiss. She knew with absolute certainty that she was in trouble, big trouble. Outside, Julian walked to the bar and poured himself another drink, his hand shaking slightly. He downed it in one go. He had faced corporate raiders, lawsuits, and threats to his life without blinking. But one kiss from the girl with the wrong keycard, and he was ready to burn his entire world down just to keep her. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a sharp, unforgiving light into the penthouse. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a brilliant, washed-out blue. Elena woke up with a stiff neck. She had eventually crawled back into bed, but sleep had been fitful. She checked her phone. 7 Leigu a.m. She groaned, remembering the night before. The kiss, the rejection. How was she supposed to face him now? She dragged herself out of bed and dressed in her wrinkled clothes from yesterday, jeans and a blouse that had seen better days. She tried to fix her hair in the mirror, but it was a hopeless cause. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had walked into a hurricane. She opened the door cautiously. The living room was empty. The mess from dinner had been cleared away. The air smelled of fresh coffee. She followed the scent to the kitchen. Julian was there. He was fully dressed now, back in his armor, a crisp white shirt, a navy blue suit, tie perfectly knotted. He was on the phone, his back to her. Yes, clear the perimeter, he was saying, his voice cold and professional. I want the car at the service entrance in 10 minutes, and get the legal team ready. I'm going to sue every single publication that ran a photo of this building. He hung up and turned around. When he saw her, his mask didn't slip. He was the CEO again. The Julian from last night, the vulnerable, shirtless man who had kissed her senseless, was gone. Good morning, he said politely. Coffee? Elena blinked, thrown off by his detached tone. Yes, please. He poured a cup and slid it across the marble island. The lockdown is lifted, he stated, not meeting her eyes. My security team has cleared a path. The press is still out front, but we're going out the back. My driver will take you wherever you need to go. Your apartment, your office? Elena took the coffee, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. He was dismissing her. Just like that. My office, she said quietly. I have to work. Right. Work. Julian checked his watch, an expensive platinum piece. Look, about last night, you don't have to say it. Elena cut him off, a flash of hurt in her eyes. It was a mistake. You were stressed. The storm. I get it. Julian looked at her then, and for a split second the mask cracked. He looked like he wanted to argue, to grab her and kiss her again, but he clamped his jaw shut and nodded. It's better this way, he said. You don't want to be involved in my life, Elena. It's toxic. I can handle myself. She repeated the words she had said the night before. I know you can, he said softly. That's why I'm letting you go. He walked over to the elevator and punched the button. The doors slid open. After you, he gestured. The ride down to the service level was suffocatingly silent. They stood side by side, not touching, but the electricity between them was still there, crackling like a live wire. Elena stared at the floor numbers ticking down, wishing they would stop, wishing they could go back up. When the doors opened, a team of burly security guards in black suits was waiting. Mr. Blackwood, the head guard, nodded. The car is ready. Julian placed a hand on the small of Elena's back to guide her. The touch burned through her blouse. Stay close to me, he murmured. Don't look at the cameras if there are any. They moved quickly toward a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. A few photographers had guessed the back exit and started shouting, their flashes popping like strobes. Is that her? Who is she? Mr. Blackwood? Julian shielded her with his body, practically lifting her into the back seat of the car. He climbed in beside her and slammed the door. Go, he barked at the driver. The car peeled away, leaving the chaos behind. Elena let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling in her lap. Are you okay? Julian asked, looking at her with concern. I'm fine, she said, though she wasn't. The car navigated the morning traffic of New York. Within 20 minutes they pulled up in front of the office building where Eleanor worked. It was a stark contrast to the luxury she had just left, a grey, imposing concrete block. Well, Elena said, her hand on the door handle, this is me. Wait. Julian reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a business card. It was heavy, black with gold lettering, and he pulled out something else, a small velvet box. Elena frowned. What is this? I noticed your earrings were damaged from the rain yesterday, he said, looking slightly embarrassed. I had my assistant pick these up this morning from the safe in the suite. Just a token. For the trouble. Elena opened the box. Inside sat a pair of diamond studs. They were tasteful, elegant, and probably worth more than her college tuition. Julian, I can't accept these. Take them, he insisted, please. And the card, if you ever need anything. Anything at all. Call the private number on the back, not the office line. Elena looked at him, clutching the velvet box. Goodbye, Julian. Goodbye, Elena. She opened the door and stepped out onto the sidewalk. She didn't look back as the black SUV merged into traffic and disappeared. She walked into her office building, clutching the diamonds and the card. She felt like she had just woken up from a fever dream. Elena, her boss, Mr. Henderson, shouted as soon as she walked in. You're late, and you look like hell. Where is the copy for the Jenkins account? Elena blinked, the mundane reality of her life crashing down on her. The deadlines, the yelling, the rent. I'll have it in an hour, she stammered. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen, but she couldn't focus. She opened her hand. The black business card sat there. Julian Blackwood, CEO. She turned it over. Scrawled on the back in handwriting she recognized was a number, and below it, 3 words. I'm sorry. She traced the ink with her finger. He had let her go to protect her. But as she looked at the diamonds sparkling under the fluorescent office lights, Eleanor had a feeling that this wasn't the end. It was just the prologue. And she was right. 2 days later, she was sitting in a meeting when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, she hid the phone under the table and answered. Hello? Turn on the TV, Elena. It was Julian. His voice sounded urgent, panicked. What? Why? Just do it. Eleanor grabbed the remote from the conference table, ignoring her boss's glare, and turned on the wall-mounted screen. It was tuned to a news channel. Breaking news flashed across the bottom in red. A photo filled the screen. A grainy, high-contrast photo taken through a telephoto lens. It showed the interior of a penthouse. A man and a woman. The man was shirtless. The woman was in a robe. They were kissing. The headline read, Billionaire's secret scandal, Julian Blackwood caught with mystery mistress. Eleanor's phone slipped from her hand and clattered onto the floor. The entire conference room went silent as everyone stared at the screen and then slowly turned to stare at her. The secret was out. And the protection Julian had promised her. It had just shattered into a million pieces. The silence in the conference room was deafening. It was a physical weight, pressing down on Elena's chest until she couldn't breathe. The image on the TV screen remained frozen. Julian's hand tangled in her hair, her head thrown back, the undeniable heat of their kiss captured in high definition for the entire world to see. Elena, Mr. Henderson said, his voice trembling with a mix of shock and rage. Is that you? Elena opened her mouth to speak, to deny it, to explain that it was a misunderstanding, a moment of madness during a storm, but the words died in her throat. The evidence was right there. She started, her voice a broken whisper. Pack your things, Henderson snapped, his face turning a shade of purple. What? Elena stood up, her legs shaking. You're fired, Elena. Look at this. We are a family-friendly marketing firm. We handle accounts for baby food and laundry detergent. We cannot be associated with the scandalous mistress of Julian Blackwood. It wasn't like that, Elena cried out. I'm not his mistress. Save it for the tabloids, Henderson sneered, pointing a shaking finger at the door. Get out. Now, before I call security. Elena looked around the room. Her colleagues, people she had shared lunch with, people she had helped with their deadlines, were all looking at her with disgust. Or worse, jealous amusement. She grabbed her bag, her heart shattering in her chest. She didn't pack her desk. She didn't take her favorite mug or the photo of her mum. She just ran. She burst out of the office doors and headed for the elevators. Tears blurred her vision. How had this happened? Who had taken that photo? The curtains were open for a second. Just a second. She reached the lobby of her building, desperate to get home, to hide under her covers and never come out. But as she approached the glass revolving doors, she stopped dead in her tracks. Outside it was a war zone. A sea of photographers, news vans and reporters swarmed the sidewalk. They were pressed against the glass like zombies, their cameras flashing incessantly. They had found her. In the 10 minutes since the news broke, they had found her workplace. "There she is," someone shouted from outside. The flashbulbs erupted like strobe lights, blinding her even through the glass. Eleanor backed away, terror seizing her. She was trapped. Again. She turned to the security guard at the desk, a man she greeted every morning. "Earl, please, is there a back way?" Earl looked at her, then looked at the mob outside. He shook his head slowly. "They're at the back too, Miss Vance. They're everywhere." Eleanor felt the panic rise, black spots dancing in her vision. She pulled out her phone. It was vibrating non-stop. Hundreds of notifications. Instagram, Twitter, unknown numbers. Slut. Gold digger. Homewrecker. The internet had already convicted her. She was about to sink to the floor right there in the lobby when a screech of tires pierced the air, audible even through the thick glass doors. The mob outside scrambled, parting like the Red Sea as a convoy of 3 black armored SUVs plowed onto the sidewalk, ignoring the curb and the pedestrians. The doors of the lead vehicle flew open. 4 massive bodyguards jumped out, pushing the photographers back with brute force. "Back off, move." Then the door of the middle car opened. Julian. He stepped out into the chaos looking like a dark avenger. He was wearing sunglasses, his jaw set in a line of grim determination. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the reporters shoving microphones in his face. He looked straight through the glass doors. At her. He marched toward the building. The security guard, Earl, scrambled to unlock the door. Julian pushed through, bringing the noise of the street with him for a split second before the doors sealed shut again. He walked straight up to Eleanor. He looked furious, but when he spoke, his voice was surprisingly controlled. "Are you hurt?" he asked, scanning her face. Elena let out a sob, the adrenaline crashing. You ruined my life. I just got fired. They're calling me names. They think We're leaving." Julian cut her off. He didn't wait for her permission. He grabbed her hand, the same hand he had held in the car 2 days ago, and pulled her toward the doors. "No, I can't go out there." Elena resisted, digging her heels in. "You can't stay here," Julian said, his grip tightening. "This building isn't secure. They'll find your apartment next. You have to come with me. To where? The penthouse? So they can take more pictures," she yelled hysterically. "To somewhere safe. Now trust me, Elena. For once." He didn't give her a choice. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, shielding her face with his suit jacket, and shoved the doors open. The noise was instantaneous and physical. Shouting, screaming. "Elena! Look this way! How much did he pay you? Julian, is she pregnant?" Elena buried her face in Julian's chest, stumbling as the crowd surged. She felt Julian shove a camera out of his way with aggressive force. "Get in the car!" he roared. His bodyguards practically threw them into the back seat of the armored SUV. The heavy door slammed shut, cutting off the noise instantly. The lock clicked. "Go!" Julian shouted at the driver. The car lurched forward, knocking over a tripod as it sped away, sirens wailing in the distance. Eleanor sat huddled in the corner of the leather seat, shaking violently. She pulled her knees to her chest. Julian ripped off his sunglasses and threw them onto the seat opposite. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying his perfect grooming. He looked at her, his expression a mix of guilt and anger. "I'm sorry," he said. Elena looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Sorry? You're sorry? I just lost my career, Julian. My reputation. My boss looked at me like I was dirt. I will fix it," he said firmly. "How? How can you fix this? That photo, it's everywhere." "I know who took it," Julian said darkly. "It was a drone. A long-range drone hovering a mile away. Only one person has access to that kind of tech and a reason to use it against me." "Who?" "My brother. Marcus." Eleanor blinked. "Your brother? He wants the CEO position. He's been trying to oust me for a year. He knows the board is conservative. A sex scandal. That's enough to trigger a vote of no confidence. He didn't just want to ruin you, Eleanor. He wanted to destroy me. You were just collateral damage." "Collateral damage," she repeated the words, tasting the bitterness. "That's all I am to you people, a pawn in your rich boy games." "No," Julian said sharply. He reached out, grabbing her wrist. "You are not a pawn, not anymore. What does that mean?" "It means that Marcus made a mistake. He thought exposing us would make me look reckless. He thought I would deny it, hide you, look guilty. And aren't you?" "No." Julian's eyes locked onto hers, cold and calculating. "I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to double down." Elena frowned, pulling her wrist away. I don't understand. Julian took a deep breath. He pressed a button on the armrest and a partition slid up, separating them from the driver. They were completely alone. The board meets in 3 days, he explained. If I walk in there as a single man caught in a scandal with a random mistress, I lose my company. Marcus wins, and you will be hounded by the press for the rest of your life. They will dig up your past, harass your family, make you unemployable. Elena felt sick. She knew he was right. So, what do? We change the narrative, Julian said. We tell them it wasn't a sordid affair. We tell them it wasn't a one-night stand. Then what was it? Julian leaned forward, his gaze intense, predatory. We tell them we're in love. We tell them we're engaged. Elena stared at him. The car seemed to spin. What? Marry me, Elena. She let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. You're insane. I'm practical, he corrected. Think about it. If you're my fiancé, the photo isn't a scandal. It's a private moment between a future husband and wife that was invaded by a creepy voyeur. The press turns from attacking you to defending you. The board sees me as a settled family man. Marcus's plan backfires completely. This is crazy, Elena whispered. I don't even know you. You know enough, he said softly. You know I kept you safe that night. You know there's chemistry. Elena flushed, the memory of the kiss surfacing unbidden. That was lust, Julian, not marriage material. It's a contract, Elena, a business arrangement, 1 year. We stay married for 1 year. In exchange, I pay off your debts. I buy your mother a house. I give you $5 million when we divorce, and I destroy anyone who insulted you today, including your former boss. Elena went silent. $5 million, revenge, safety. And if I say no? Julian looked out the window at the passing city. Then I drop you off at your apartment. I'll give you some money for security, of course, but I can't stop the media storm. You'll be on your own. It was a threat, veiled as a choice. Elena looked at him. He was manipulative, arrogant, and dangerous, but looking at his profile, she also saw the man who had eaten dinner with her on the floor, the man who had stopped himself from going too far. Where are we going? She asked quietly. To my estate in the Hamptons, he answered. It's a fortress, no drones, no cameras. Elena took a deep breath. She thought about her empty bank account. She thought about Mr. Henderson's sneer. She thought about the sold sign on the house her mother wanted. Make it 10 million, she said. Julian turned to her slowly. A slow, impressed smile spread across his face. Done. He reached into the minibar console and pulled out a bottle of champagne. To the happy couple. Eleanor didn't smile. She took the glass he offered. She wasn't drinking to happiness. She was drinking to survival. The drive to the Hamptons took 2 hours. They didn't speak much. Eleanor spent the time deleting her social media apps and staring out the window as the concrete jungle gave way to autumn trees and grand iron gates. Julian spent the ride on his phone, barking orders to his legal team and PR firm. Draft the statement. Yes, love at first sight. We met. Say we met at a charity gala 6 months ago. Keep it vague. And get a ring. A big one. Delivered to the estate tonight. Elena listened, feeling like she was watching a movie of her own life. It was terrifying how easily he spun lies. The car finally slowed down, turning onto a private road lined with ancient oaks. At the end of the drive stood a mansion that looked more like a European castle than a beach house. Stone walls, turrets, and the ocean crashing against the cliffs in the backyard. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood, Julian said dryly as the car stopped. Future Mrs. Blackwood, Elena corrected him. For now. They stepped out. The air here was salty and clean. The silence was absolute, broken only by the waves. It was peaceful, but to Elena, it felt like a prison, a very expensive prison. The front door opened, and an older woman in a severe grey suit stepped out. Master Julian, she nodded. Mrs. Higgins, this is Elena, Julian introduced them. She'll be staying in the master suite with me. Elena's head snapped toward him. Excuse me? With you? Mrs. Higgins didn't blink. Of course, sir. I'll have your bags brought up. As they walked into the grand foyer with its double staircase and crystal chandelier, Elena grabbed Julian's arm. We are not sleeping in the same room, she hissed. The deal is a fake marriage, not a real one. Julian stopped, looking down at her hand on his arm. His muscles were tense. My staff gossips, Elena. If we sleep in separate rooms, it'll be in the tabloids by morning. We have to sell this. 24/7. I am not sleeping in your bed, she insisted. The bed is 10 feet wide, Elena. I promise I'll stay on my side. Unless— His voice dropped, his eyes glinting with mischief. You get scared of a storm again. Elena pulled her hand away, cheeks burning. You are insufferable. I'm your fiancé. Get used to it. He led her upstairs. The master suite was even bigger than the penthouse. It had its own living room, a balcony overlooking the ocean, and a bathroom that was larger than her entire studio apartment. And the bed was enormous. Julian walked into the walk-in closet. You have nothing to wear, he noted, looking at her simple jeans. I'll have a stylist come tomorrow. For tonight, he tossed her a t-shirt. It was soft, black, and smelled like him. Cedar and musk. Wear that. Dinner is at 8. We have a strategy meeting. He turned to leave. Where are you going? Elena asked, feeling a sudden pang of anxiety at being left alone in this massive house. To the gym, he said. I need to blow off some steam. Unless you want to join me? Elena shook her head. Suit yourself. When he left, Elena walked to the balcony doors. She looked out at the dark ocean. Yesterday, she was a nobody. Today, she was the $10 million fiancé of Julian Blackwood. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But as she held the black t-shirt to her nose and inhaled, she realized something else. She felt alive. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was playing a game, and she intended to win. Later that night, Elena went down for dinner. She was wearing Julian's t-shirt tucked into her jeans, barefoot. She didn't care about impressing him anymore. If he wanted a fake wife, he was getting the real Elena. She found him in the kitchen, not the dining room. He was cooking. He had changed into sweatpants and a tight t-shirt. He was chopping vegetables with expert precision. You cook? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. I like control, he said without looking up. Cooking is chemistry. Exact measurements, predictable results. Unlike women? She teased. Unlike life, he corrected. He slid a plate of pasta across the counter toward her. Carbonara, no cream. The authentic way. It smells amazing, she admitted, sitting on a bar stool. Julian poured 2 glasses of red wine. He sat opposite her. Okay, let's get your story straight, he said. All business again. You are Elena Vance, 24 years old. You studied literature. You volunteer at, let's say, an animal shelter. It tests well with focus groups. I actually do volunteer at a shelter, Elena mumbled, chewing a mouthful of pasta. It was delicious. Good. We met at the Met Gala. I saw you from across the room. It was electric. I chased you for months, but you played hard to get because you didn't want to be with a billionaire. That part isn't hard to believe, Elena muttered. Julian ignored the jab. We got engaged 3 days ago, private ceremony. Just us, the ring. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a box. It was black velvet, much larger than the earring box. He slid it across the counter. Elena wiped her hands on a napkin and opened it. She gasped. Inside was a diamond the size of a grape, an emerald cut, flawless, set in platinum. It sparkled so brightly it almost hurt to look at. Julian, this is— It belonged to my grandmother, he said quietly. It's the Blackwood family ring. Elena looked up, shocked. You're giving me a family heirloom for a fake engagement. It has to look real, Elena. If I bought a new ring, the press would track the purchase. This ring hasn't been seen in 50 years. It proves I'm serious. He stood up and walked around the counter. Stand up. Elena stood, her heart pounding. Give me your hand. She held out her left hand. It was trembling. Julian took it in his warm, large hand. He looked at her fingers. Slender, unadorned. He took the ring from the box. He didn't just slide it on, he held her gaze. His eyes were intense, searching. With this ring, he whispered, reciting the words like a vow, we begin the lie. He slid the cold metal onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. Elena looked down at her hand. It looked heavy, weighted with history and deceit. It's beautiful, she whispered. Julian didn't let go of her hand. He pulled her a step closer. The air in the kitchen shifted again, becoming thick and heavy. You have to sell it, Elena, he said, his voice dropping. When we're in public, when people are watching. You have to look at me like you can't breathe without me. Like this? She asked breathlessly, looking up at him through her lashes. His eyes dilated. Yes, like that. He leaned in. He was going to kiss her again. Elena knew it. She tilted her head back, ready. But then, a loud banging on the front door shattered the moment. Bang! Bang, bang. Julian froze. He pulled back, his face hardening instantly. "Who is that?" Elena asked, frightened. "You said the gate was locked." "It is," Julian said. He moved in front of her, shielding her. "Stay here." He walked toward the hallway. Elena followed him, terrified, but unable to stay behind. Julian looked at the security monitor. His face went pale. "It's not the press," he said grimly. "Who is it?" He opened the heavy oak door. Standing on the porch, drenched in the sea spray, was a man who looked exactly like Julian but with a cruel twist to his mouth. Marcus. And he wasn't alone. Standing beside him, holding a folder, was a woman Elena recognized from the news. A shark of a lawyer. "Well, well," Marcus sneered, stepping into the house without an invitation. The happy couple. "Get out, Marcus," Julian growled. "Not until we talk, big brother," Marcus smiled, his eyes landing on Elena, and on the ring on her finger. "Nice rock. Too bad it's going to be the most expensive mistake you ever made." "What do you want?" Julian demanded. The lawyer stepped forward. "We're here to serve you papers, Mr. Blackwood. The board has called an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning. They aren't waiting 3 days." Marcus stepped closer to Elena, invading her space. He sniffed. "She smells like fear, Julian. Or is that just your cheap cologne rubbing off on her?" Julian shoved Marcus back. "Don't talk to her." "Oh, I'll do more than talk," Marcus laughed darkly. "Because I know something you don't, Julian. I know who she really is." He turned to Elena, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Hello, Elena. Or should I say, the daughter of the man who embezzled millions from Blackwood Corp 10 years ago." Elena's blood ran cold. The room spun. Julian turned to her, shock written all over his face. "What? You didn't check her father's file, did you?" Marcus cackled. "You only checked hers. Her father is Robert Vance, the man our father sent to prison." Julian stared at Elena. The betrayal in his eyes was instant and devastating. "Is it true?" he whispered. Elena backed away, shaking her head. I didn't know. He never told me who he worked for." "Get out," Julian said. But he wasn't talking to Marcus. He was looking at Elena. "Julian, please, get out." The lie had just begun, but the truth was about to destroy them both. The echo of Julian's shout, "Get out!" reverberated off the stone walls of the foyer. Marcus smiled, a cold, reptilian expression. He tapped the folder against his palm. "I'll see you at the board meeting, Julian. Try not to be late. It's going to be a short tenure." Marcus turned and walked out into the night, the heavy door slamming shut behind him. The sound was like a gunshot signaling the end of the game. Silence rushed back into the hallway, but it was suffocating now. Elena stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at Julian. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the floor, his hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. "Julian," Elena whispered, taking a step toward him. "Please, you have to listen to me. Don't." He cut her off. His voice was dangerously quiet. "Don't come near me." "I didn't know," she pleaded, tears stinging her eyes. "My father, he went to prison when I was 14. My mother never told me which company he stole from. She just said he was a bad man. We haven't spoken to him in 10 years. "A likely story," Julian spat, finally raising his head. His eyes, which had looked at her with such heat only minutes ago, were now shards of ice. "It all makes sense now. The wrong room, the storm, the leaked photos. It wasn't just Marcus, it was you. You were working together." "No," Elena cried. "That's insane." "Is it? You're the daughter of the man who tried to bankrupt my family. You have a vendetta. You played the innocent, scared girl perfectly. And I fell for it." He laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "I actually fell for it. I let you into my home. I gave you my grandmother's ring." He walked toward her, looming over her, radiating pure menace. "How much is Marcus paying you? Or were you planning to divorce me in a year and take half my fortune to bail your father out?" Elena stared at him, the hurt transforming into something else. Anger. Pure, white, hot anger. She had lost her job, her reputation, and her dignity for this man. And he didn't trust her. After everything, he saw her as a villain. She stopped crying. She straightened her spine, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "You are an idiot, Julian Blackwood," she said, her voice shaking but clear. Julian blinked, taken aback by her tone. "Excuse me? You're a genius with computers, but you're an idiot with people," she continued, stepping closer to him until she was poking him in the chest. "You think everyone is out to get you. You're so busy building walls that you can't see the truth when it's standing right in front of you. She grabbed her left hand. She yanked the platinum ring off her finger. It resisted for a second, then slid off, leaving a cold phantom sensation on her skin. Here, she slammed the ring onto the hallway table. The heavy diamond hit the wood with a dull thud. Keep your ring, keep your money, keep your $10 million. She turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Julian asked, his voice wavering slightly. I'm leaving, she said, grabbing the door handle. I'd rather face the wolves out there than spend another minute with a man who thinks I'm capable of that kind of betrayal. But you have nowhere to go, Julian stammered. The press. I'll figure it out, like I always do. Goodbye, Julian. She opened the door and stepped out into the dark, windy night. The door clicked shut behind her. Julian stood there, staring at the closed door. He looked at the ring sitting on the table. It sparkled under the chandelier, cold and abandoned. If she was a gold digger, why did she leave the ring? Why did she leave the money? Mrs. Higgins, the housekeeper, stepped out of the shadows. She had been watching from the top of the stairs. She walked down slowly, her face stern. You are a fool, Master Julian, she said simply. Julian rubbed his temples. You don't understand, Higgins. Her father... I heard, Mrs. Higgins interrupted. But I also saw that girl's eyes. She was looking at you like you were the sun, and you just cast her into the dark. She's a liability, Julian muttered, trying to convince himself. She was your only chance, Mrs. Higgins corrected. And now, she's gone, and you are alone. Again. Julian stared at the ring. A sick feeling began to spread in his stomach. A realization. Elena hadn't tried to negotiate. She hadn't asked for a settlement. She had just left. He grabbed his phone. He dialed his private investigator. Run a check on Robert Vance's daughter. Not the financials. The personal records. Visitation logs at the prison. Phone records. Now. He paced the hallway for 10 agonizing minutes. Finally, the phone rang. Speak, Julian barked. Boss, the investigator said. You were right about the father. He's a crook. But the daughter? She's clean. She hasn't visited him in 8 years. She blocked his number on her phone. In fact, she sends half her paycheck to her mother to pay off the debts he left behind. She hates him. The phone slipped from Julian's hand and clattered to the floor. She was telling the truth. She was innocent. And he had just sent her away, unprotected, into a night filled with reporters who wanted her blood. Eleanor, he shouted, spinning around. He ran to the door and threw it open. Eleanor. But the driveway was empty. The wind howled through the trees. She was gone. Julian ran to his car. He had to find her. He had to fix this. Not for the board meeting, not for the company, but because the thought of her out there, alone and hurt, made him feel like he couldn't breathe. He roared down the driveway, his headlights cutting through the darkness. He found her a mile down the road. She was walking on the grassy shoulder, hugging herself against the cold. A news van was already slowing down beside her, a cameraman hanging out the window. Julian swerved his car in front of the van, blocking it. He jumped out. Back off, he roared at the reporters. He ran to Elena. She looked up, her face pale, shivering. When she saw him, she didn't smile. She stepped back. Go away, she said through chattering teeth. I'm not going anywhere, Julian said. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I don't care, she whispered. I know, he said, pulling her into his arms. She was freezing. I know. But you have to come back. Not for the deal, but because I can't let you go. Why? She asked against his chest, her resistance crumbling as the warmth of his body seeped into hers. Because, Julian whispered into her hair, realizing the truth as he said it. I think I'm falling in love with you and I'm terrified. Elena looked up at him. The headlights of the news van illuminated his face. He looked wrecked. He looked real. Get in the car, he pleaded. We have a war to win tomorrow. Elena hesitated. Then she nodded. She got in the car, but she didn't put the ring back on. Not yet. The headquarters of Blackwood Corp was a glass monolith piercing the Manhattan skyline. Inside the boardroom on the 50th floor, the atmosphere was funereal. 12 board members sat around a long mahogany table. Marcus sat at the head in Julian's chair. He looked smug. The meeting has been in session for 20 minutes, Marcus announced, checking his watch. Julian is a no-show. I think his absence speaks for itself. He is unfit to lead. I move for an immediate vote of no confidence. I second the motion, the lawyer said. Wait, an older board member said. We should give him... The double doors slammed open with a force that shook the room. Julian Blackwood strode in. He looked impeccable in a black suit, but there was a dangerous energy radiating from him, and he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, head held high, was Elena. She wore a simple white dress that Julian had ordered overnight. She wore no jewelry, no ring, just a fierce determination in her eyes. Sorry I'm late, Julian said smoothly, walking to the head of the table. Marcus, get out of my chair. Marcus didn't move. You're finished, Julian. We know about the girl, the daughter of Robert Vance, a corporate spy in your bed. It's over. Julian stopped. He looked at the board members, who were whispering frantically. Yes, Julian said, his voice ringing out. This is Elena Vance, daughter of Robert Vance. Gasps filled the room. And she is the most honest person in this building, Julian continued. He turned to Elena. She stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but she clasped them behind her back. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Elena began, her voice steady. My father stole from this company. That is a fact. He is a criminal. But sins are not genetic. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Marcus Blackwood claims I am a spy, that I seduced Julian to destroy him. But here is the truth. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. Last night, after I left Julian's estate, I received a text message from an unknown number. It offered me $500,000 to stay away from the meeting today, to let Julian fall. She threw the paper on the table. It was a printout of the screenshot. I traced the number, Julian added. It's a burner phone. But the payment account? It's linked to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, a company owned by Marcus Blackwood. The board members turned to Marcus. His smug smile faltered. That's a lie, Marcus shouted, standing up. Is it? Eleanor asked. You knew who my father was before Julian did. How? Because you researched me the moment Julian's security team logged my ID at the hotel. You realized you could use my family history as a weapon. You leaked the photo. You orchestrated this entire scandal. She looked at the board, her eyes blazing. Julian Blackwood didn't bring a spy into this company. He brought the woman who just saved it from a usurper who would burn it to the ground for power. Silence. Absolute silence. Then the older board member stood up. He looked at Marcus. Is this true? Marcus stammered, his face turning red. It's business. Julian is weak. He's distracted by this girl. Security, Julian barked. 2 guards entered instantly. Escort my brother out of the building, Julian ordered. And call the legal department. We're doing a full audit of his accounts. Marcus screamed obscenities as he was dragged out of the room. The heavy doors closed, sealing the noise out. Julian looked at the board. He looked tired but victorious. Any other motions? He asked. The board members looked at each other. Then they looked at Elena, the woman who had just taken down a shark without blinking. Motion to keep Julian Blackwood as CEO, the older member said. Seconded. All in favor? Every hand went up. 1 hour later, the office was empty. The board had dispersed. The crisis was averted. Julian stood by the window, looking out at the city he ruled. But he didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man who was hanging by a thread. Eleanor was packing her bag near the door. Where are you going? Julian asked, turning around. Home, she said softly. The deal is done. You kept your company. Marcus is gone. You don't need a fake fiancé anymore. Julian walked across the room. He moved fast, closing the distance between them. Eleanor. She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. You didn't wear the ring today, he noticed. No, she said. I couldn't. It felt wrong. To wear a symbol of a lie while I was trying to tell the truth. Julian reached into his pocket. He pulled out the black velvet box. Then, don't wear it as a lie, he said. He got down on one knee. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Julian, get up, there are no cameras here. I know, he said, looking up at her. That's why I'm doing it. He opened the box. The diamond shone, but it was the emotion in Julian's eyes that blinded her. Elena, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I have spent my life calculating risks, predicting outcomes, but walking into that hotel room, that was the one variable I never saw coming. You challenged me. You fought me. You saved me. He took a deep breath. I don't want a contract. I don't want a timeline. I want you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and argue about cooking pasta. I want to protect you. I want to love you. He took her hand. Elena Vance, will you marry me? For real? Eleanor looked down at him. Tears spilled over her cheeks. She thought about the storm, the fear, the anger, and the undeniable magnetic pull that had brought them to this moment. You're still an idiot, she laughed through her tears. I know, he smiled, a genuine boyish smile. But I'm your idiot. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Julian stood up and slid the ring onto her finger. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like it belonged there. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Not for the cameras, not for the board, but for them. It was a kiss of promise, a kiss of forever. As they pulled apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. By the way, he murmured. What? The upgrade to the penthouse? It wasn't a plumbing leak. Elena frowned. What? I saw you in the lobby, Julian confessed, his eyes twinkling. You looked wet, miserable, and beautiful. I told the receptionist to upgrade you. I didn't expect you to walk into my suite. Elena's jaw dropped. You set this whole thing up? Just the room, he promised. The rest was fate. Eleanor laughed and punched him lightly on the arm. I love you, Julian Blackwood. I love you, Eleanor. Outside, the sun was setting over New York, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. The storm was over, and inside the office, two people who had started as strangers in the dark had finally found their light. What a journey, from a wrong room to a perfect ending. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and share with us which city you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to Eternal Desire for your next unforgettable romance. See you in the next video.